Well, Zel, episode 4. What do you think about that?
I think it's awesome, brother. Pretty excited tonight. We got, holy cow, we got a lot of ground to cover.
We do, and one of the things, it's funny because Zel and I can take very little and work for quite a long time. So it's going to be very interesting to see if we can fit it all in tonight in our generally around a couple hours. So if it runs long, I'm not promising that it will, but if it does, you'll know why. And so, Zel, if you want to kind of introduce what we're talking about and kind of, its importance a little bit as well in coming up in Star Citizen.
Well, today's episode is going to be modularity, something that's kind of been a little bit of contention with the community for quite some time. When things got introduced, back in 2015, um, became a big stretch goal thing. And in that 2016, 17, 18 range, it kind of became a point of contention with the community. People didn't know, uh, they feel like it was kind of a bait and switch situation for a lot of people where they brought it in as a stretch goal and then put it on the back burner and then it kind of wasn't talked about again for a long time, and people kind of had a black pill moment. But from all the research that we've done lately, and it's been brought up more recently that modularity is still a big part of a lot of these ships that we're going to be talking about tonight. Something that the reason that it had been so long in the pipeline is that there was a lot of technical issues that needed to be overcome before modularity could get in. We'll touch a little bit on those, I guess, a little bit later on the tech part. But yeah, we're here to say that something that we should, get pretty excited about, because there's a lot of implications for, your particular gameplay style, with your ships, changing it out, going bounty hunting in, 1 minute and changing it out to run cargo the next. It's it's a design that something that keeps a lot of different things going on. So
Absolutely. I mean, one of the things I will say is, and I'm really kind of happy I missed a lot of that early debate about that stuff, and I could certainly understand where the community was coming from. But just the modularity in general, and of course that you have your major ships so that they've talked about it, but then there's a much more extended list as Zell's kind of dug into it. I don't know. I mean, from a ship standpoint, I don't know of a single more kind of interesting thought or kind of a single more important game function maybe than being able to take your one craft and really specialize it in multiple different ways. I mean, it is a really really fascinating kind of concept. Of course, one of the things that caught my ears was something that was said in 2018 calling all devs, and I think Zel and I have kind of definitely dove back into some antiquity here when it comes to modularity. And somebody spoke to it, says, think of modules as cartridges, but they really did, and I think Zel alluded to this, they really did talk about it required a specialized interior object container, a back-end technology that just wasn't available at the time. And I think that, as they began to kind of, obviously there's of course the dreamer phase where you think of all the different kinds of modules that you could potentially put into a ship. But then there's that point where the rubber meets the road and you actually have to begin kind of planning for those things. And they must have realized at some point they just weren't going to have the technology. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, from the back end. But then, of course, there's all these other very critical things like pipe management, power management, heat, life support, access points, and all of that stuff has to fit like a glove in there. You can't have gaps where your modular things banging around back there. It's all got to fit exactly in the same spaces. So a tremendous amount of work has to go into it.
Well, what's pretty wild about that is that they built the engine that these ships function off the power supply. I mean, yes, there's a C switches and different things that they can turn on and off, but the way the engine works is these particular any compartment in your ship right now has, digitally has power running to it, has cooling running to it, different systems. If your computer's in that particular area, your computer systems. So in the future, when those areas get damaged, they get shut off. Like you can have, for bigger ships, you can have certain areas of your ships that lose life support, that lose hull integrity, where that area of the ship, oxygen would be evacuated. So, you would have to, go and fix the life support systems and patch those having the ability to go in and patch those areas up and reroute, systems power back to the ship. And it's gonna, be a lot of fun gameplay, but all those systems exist inside the modules too. So all the power, all the, everything that runs through that area will be attached to that module. So, but one of the, as they were saying, the things that they ran into is they knew how to do it. It's kind of a timing issue for them right now.
Right.
It's basically a core tech obstacle. And in a simpler terms, it's an item port system needs to work inside an object container, which it does. Then you have stations that have item parts inside of them. So you have object containers are static, not dynamic. So the object container can't move, and that's kind of the problem when you say, take the Retaliator, for instance, when you try to put the jump ship module inside of it, the way it works now is its core design with the bomb bay, that will stay static. So when the module goes in, you'll have the jump ship seats, but then you'll have those 2 9-size torpedoes, right there with them as well.
Yeah, depending on how you lay it out. You're absolutely right. I mean, go ahead.
Those object containers need to become dynamic, and that's what they're kind of working on. I guess one of the big things is that when you delete them and undelete them, the engine doesn't like that right now. And the people that need to work, which is, I guess, the ironic part to all of this, is the teams that are putting the PU together, that working on server meshing, are the same guys that design the object containers. So those guys would have to come in and recode all those different things to be dynamic instead of static, and then run the pipe system code, which is, your power, your cooling, your, all the different things that go through that area.
Absolutely. I mean, and make no mistake about it. I mean, there are core tech teams that are very familiar with the way Star Citizen works, that have been migrated to Squadron 42. That Squadron 42, as everybody knows, has become a I think the thing with Squadron 42 ultimately is, I think they know that there's an end to it. They can actually there's a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that they pour a lot of time and energy into it, they can actually get to a finished product. Where potentially, I mean, the PU, may not ever be finished. Who knows? I mean, they just keep adding on and on. As long as people are playing the game and money continues to come in, they may continue to add systems at some point in the future. I mean, certainly there's an enormous amount of development between now and then. All sorts of systems, that you hope come into play. But it must take an enormous amount of time to spin up core tech teams. And they have a lot of their core tech teams are really repurposed right now to just kind of lay the lash to Squadron 42 and get it out the door.
Well, do you think do you think they're at that point right now that they kind of see the light at the end of the tunnel?
Well, one of the things that's hinting towards that, and I think you and I talked about it a little bit, is the fact that they're starting to work on the Retaliator base. And I think that that's a bit of a tell. I do. I think that that might be kind of a tell that they're starting to get to the technical place that they need to get to in order to kind of begin putting some wrap around some of these modular things. It's one of the reasons we find ourselves here talking about this. I think it's, Zel and I are incredibly interested in the infinite layers of Star Citizen. And there's a lot of history that you can dig into, and a lot of words have been said, and a lot of things have happened, and I myself have seen the PU come an enormous amount of ways in the year and a half that I've been actively playing the game. But I do think with entity streaming coming, in 318, and some of these things, we're starting to get around the corner on some of this back end tech. And I, like I said, I think that Retaliator base, the fact that they're starting to work on it, is kind of a tip of the hat to the fact that modularity is definitely on the radar, and we're starting to get to a place where they can potentially envision being able to put some resources into it and make something happen.
Well, as being a bit of a Star Citizen archaeologist. When they were explaining, some of the tech obstacles that these guys had right now, that's been over a year ago. And the fact that just recently, them talking about reworking the Retaliator, expanding. They're going to expand it a little bit. AI couldn't walk down the hall. AI couldn't transverse those hallways very well, so they're going to expand it out a little bit, and probably a little bit in the beam, a little bit in the length. The very fact that they're working on it leads us to believe that they've at least. When you look at a lot of these guys, some of, these engineers, people kind of get swapped in and out on certain things, and they'll work on a particular item. They'll have a time frame. They'll have like 20 days to work on that item. And then they have to go in and overcome those things in those 20 days. And then those engineers will have to go back to what they were working on, that type of thing. But the very fact that they're working on the Retaliator now leads me to believe, and you as well, that they've overcome those obstacles with modularity.
I couldn't agree more.
Which opens up, a whole broad new thing for gameplay.
And not, an absolutely stunning amount of gameplay for stunning amount of gameplay options. But also, if you really stop and take a look at this and you start beginning laying all the nuts and bolts on the table, there's a tremendous amount of value in potentially these base model ships. You think about the Retaliator, once again, the Caterpillar and the Endeavor, the three kind of. And while there's a much larger, much more extensive list, as Zel's uncovered, and we'll talk about a little bit more, but there is when you lay your hard-earned dollars out for, and Zel and I are people that highly encourage you to buy ships in game. For the most part, you might want to, support the game how you will, but be
a backer.
Yeah,
be a backer for sure.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. But if you're wanting to take that Pokemon approach and collect them all, collect them in game. One of the things that V and I had talked about before, we still have those itchy fingers. It's like, ooh,
difficult.
It's the feeling of ownership, and I know a lot of people have that. It's one of the big drivers for me. It's ooh, I bought it, I own it. But eventually, when you buy it in game, you'll own it too. It isn't a monetary asset anymore. It's something that you earned inside the game. Um, and hey, if you love collecting digital assets for real life money, I am go for it. uh, but I believe it's really the game's really built to for you to earn those things in game. And I'm not saying I still, we still buy, um, we still buy little packs and things like that to keep the game running. I'm a subscriber.
Yep, I am too.
So, so we, so $20 a month goes the game every month. And not to go, too far out of what we're talking about here, it, even if it was a subscription model, I'd pay it. It's like if people are, we've all paid those MMO subscriptions, and I feel like it honestly, any game that doesn't have that model, and you're really doing yourself a disservice, because I'd pay that every month.
Oh, I would too. I mean,
And
you for people like us who game, I mean, this is a big part of our entertainment budget. It also, I mean, potentially a bit, not to be too crazy about it, but a big part of your kind of just state of health. I mean, it's just a wonderful, like, it's very cathartic for me to be able to go out, find my little corner of space and do some mining. And just I enjoy the gameplay loop. The cares of the world just kind of slip away, and I just kind of get focused on making sure that I keep that that charge right in the green window, and that and I really just kind of forget, and just kind of begin kind of getting into the fact that hey, I mean, I got it, I got this this job in front of me, you know what I mean, and I want to get this thing done and get it back to the refinery. So.
That's right.
Yeah, it's just one of those things. I mean, when you get bit, you do get bit sometimes by. There are certain games that get you, like that we talked about, for instance, Star Wars Galaxy's Last. Star Citizen's got me. Like it's one of those games where I definitely, it's a beautiful game. It's audacious. It's taking risks. And I appreciate that, and I'm definitely willing to, to kind of back it and throw a little of my hard-earned dollars in there as a thank you for the enjoyment that I get out of it, which is a tremendous amount. But I still think, and I am a huge advocate of buying things in game and as a sense of progression. But if you are going to spend your hard-earned dollars, maybe some of your best money spent are in these modular ships, which is one of the reasons we're talking about them tonight.
Something like the Retaliator that that can provide multiple different roles.
Absolutely.
Things even now, and we'll talk a little bit because, wow, can we talk a lot about it? But the Endeavor, right now, base price on that thing was $350.
That thing is that. I mean, and then that ship, yeah. Go ahead.
That's literally a capital ship,
slightly
for
smaller than
$350. Yeah. That is, if you're talking about, that is good value. You and I have already spent more than $500 on the game, and we kind of are at that point where we feel like we've done our part. Like I said, we're subscribers, so, and we'll continue to pay that monthly subscription as well, but because we believe in it. But we're at that point now where we get more enjoyment from getting out and earning those new ships in game. I mean, that's a driving thing for us.
I agree 100%.
And so that's where our gameplay fun comes from.
And I mean, just to kind of speak to the one thing I have heard from some people is that, and I definitely understand for some other gameplay loops there may not be a sense of progression. But in Star Citizen, I absolutely experienced a complete sense of progression, because I am interested in space mining. It's just, like in the real world, like I read articles about potential drone, pushing kind of space drone fleets into the asteroid belt, or, like future, like popular science, future, yes, that stuff is just interesting to me in general. But when I first started playing, I think they were given the 135 COA as kind of a loner. I had a Cuddy Black. I started just kind of, did your basic box missions. I started hand mining. Because the only thing persistent in the universe at that time was a backpack. So I would hand mine, I'd throw stuff in my backpack. If I 30K'd or whatever, at least I wound back up on Alisar with a backpack full of Hadnite. And then eventually I purchased an ROC with profits from hand mining. Eventually I purchased the Prospector with profits from ROC mining. And then I realized I loved the Prospector, and I purchased the Prospector for real dollars. And of course, eventually earned the mole in game as well. But, so sense of progression is one of those things where I think you can mix up the acquisition of ships with that as well. And that's why I do strongly recommend that you find the thing you like to do in game, and you do that thing in the game, and then you earn. And now there are some gameplay loops that have come kind of full circle. You can FPS and make quite a bit of money. You can go cave spelunking and find things in the caves. I think you just did some of that, Zel.
Oh, yeah. A couple of guys and I, we went spelunking on one of those fly down into caves, and if you haven't experienced that yet, it is pretty mind-blowing, the amount of work that the vastness of those caves. It's pretty huge, and the little jumping puzzles and everything else. It's pretty great. And if you haven't experienced it yet, I fully recommend going and doing a little spelunking. That's for sure.
So yeah, absolutely. And I drove us into the weeds there. One thing I will say, the thing that kind of pivoting back really quickly to the Retaliator, one of the things that I guess I didn't know about it, which of course it's one of the, I always knew there was this torpedo variant was out there, but I never quite realized that there was a front and a back modular section. That there's a front and a rear section, and that there are some things that only work in the front, and there are some things that only work in the back. And I thought that was very interesting.
Well, the Caterpillar is one of those ships that it gets brought up. One of the things that not to drive back into the weeds, but things like the Odyssey, things, those type of ships that are going to be like the Swiss Army knives. The Caterpillar kind of fits that same role. It's going to be like a Swiss Army knife.
Oh, absolutely. The Cat it's really got a lot of different module options. I mean, and we don't know. I mean, a lot of this, we're pontificating a bit, and there's been a lot of words said, and we don't necessarily know how much of what was said is, just kind of theory crafting on their part. But there's a heck of a good. I will just, in reference to the Caterpillar, there is a ship shape on the Drake Caterpillar that was from November 21st to 2015, where Randy Vasquez and Space Dad kind of go into the different modules. It's very, very much worth a watch. Now, I understand that there's some perishable information in there, but you really do get the sense of all of the different ways that you could potentially modify that ship, and it's pretty amazing.
Well, a lot of those things may change. I think one of the things a lot of people, they kind of get into or conflate with, they're not going to do it or whatever else. Yeah, things do change. We've seen a lot of this with something that's going to be coming up here pretty soon with Alien Week, is the Banu Merchantman. Yeah. That thing has grown in size tremendously.
It has. It
was going to be a lot smaller than it is now. Oh, yeah. It is a huge ship now. And these guys that are designing this stuff, a lot of people kind of go, the developers, they don't want to do it, or maybe they don't know how to do it. I don't think it's that at all. I think these guys are as passionate as we are about building this. I know I would be. I'd be, one of the things I said the other night to someone, that is, if I was designing a game I would definitely be, if someone wrote me a blank check and said, here, design the game that you want to design. Yes, I would throw everything and the kitchen sink, the neighbor's backyard,
Absolutely.
you know, into the game. There is not. I would want this to be a living, breathing thing, and I believe that's the direction that the game is going. I feel like a lot of these guys, when you hear them talking about it, they talk about it with a passion that we do, and I believe that if it's possible, they'll make it happen.
Oh, I agree 100%. One of the things that kind of blew my mind, as I was kind of preparing for this, is the Retaliator and the Caterpillar. They have these brochures, and I don't know if you've ever looked at the brochures. They're pretty amazing.
I tell you what, some of those commercials and brochures are some of the best ever.
And you talk about, I mean, and I understand this marketing material, and that's not lost on me. But it's just like, if you take a look, if you just roll through the Retaliator brochure, the PDF of that thing, I promise you a tremendous amount of time and energy went into those things. I mean, just the brochure. And so if you ever wonder where the money in Star Citizen's going, I mean, it's unbelievable, really, the level of detail that they put into some of these things. Now, and I will say, I mean, I don't get too lost in the sauce, if you will, when it comes to the brochures. I always look at those as, like if I walk into a car dealership, they have a brochure for their car, and it's going to say, like, this is the greatest thing since sliced bread. I've always approached the Star Citizen brochures the same way, kind of like a role play of the company's best spin on how that ship. I don't take that stuff as CIG saying verbatim, this is the thing that it works. This is how it goes. Is this the carrot killer? Like that whole thing. Like, and I know that was kind of said more by a dev, but the Odyssey, being a perfect example of that. I mean, there's some fantastic attention to detail poured into some of these resources about these ships.
That's I think we need to develop one of the next episodes that we need to do is maybe we need to put the Carrack and the Odyssey head to head.
I love that idea. I think that's a good one.
We'll kind of look at it at the, we'll play the, we'll play both sides of it, kind of do the devil advocate type thing and see where it all kind of weighs out.
Where that conversation
which
leads.
One would you prefer type thing. So.
So let's talk about, I do want to talk about, of course, the more extended list, but let's just talk about, because I know that we were talking about a little about the CAL, a little about the Retaliator. Let's go through the modules in the Retaliator just first, because it's the smallest one. And so, I thought that would, of course, you have the base variant, which is just, as far as I know, it's just kind of it's just kind of empty back there. I mean, I don't.
Yep, it doesn't. Yeah, for the front and aft, it's blank. As it is now, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't have anything, and it doesn't have the torpedo bay.
Right.
So
it'll be interesting to see. Of course, then they have the torpedo bay. Now, it's important to understand that. Once again, like, it has a front and a rear section that are modular. That's what's interesting about that. And so so you have the torpedo, then you have the cargo, and there's two different variants of those. They have independent lifts, which I think is cool. I think a total of about 40 SCU, 20 SCU each is kind of what they had said. I don't know if you heard anything different than that, which is
nope.
Then you have your living space, which is there's actually two different variants of that, like a front and a rear, and they're different. They're slightly different. And one of them did feature, I don't know if you've, like in the M2 or the A2 or the C2, when you have that personal storage type thing, they do mention that there is that personal storage is in that living space, kind of thing. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
The different hab areas. So that front hab area also has kind of that crew commons area,
yes,
as well. So
yep, that's awesome. Then you have your dropship variant, which is only for the front. It's a front only thing. It's 12
Yep,
troopers.
2 drum seats, yeah.
Now, here's some things that were interesting. It's got weapons racks, of course, and it's basically a light armory in there. But then they have this recharge for power armor was one of the things that was mentioned. Now, power armor had never been anything I'd heard of before. It makes sense, that there's some kind of some armor maybe that had personal shields. I think in Dune actually a little bit, for that particular type of thing. But that's just, it surprised me because they're like, you can recharge your power armor. I'm like, what's power armor? Wait, what?
Yeah, they're oh man, I'll really get into the weeds if I start talking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're for
Titan armor they called it.
Yeah. They're gonna have the different variants of armor, and one of them is the when you're for medical gameplay, a lot of that armor is going to be powered. Some of those modules will be able to be recharged from the armor. It has those particular pieces also have modularity too, and we could really talk a lot about that as well.
We really could. So, I mean, those are the 4 that they mentioned: torpedo, cargo, living space, dropship. But there are also some additional ones in the pipeline that actually kind of, and I'm not saying these are 100%, but these were also options that were mentioned. And cryostasis, like for bounty hunters, much like I think you see in the Cutlass Blue, those types of things. And of course a medical station type variant as well. And then they even mentioned potentially like some salvage, maybe some E-war, type of stuff as well. So it's I definitely know those first 4 that we mentioned are coming, but there's some other things that were just kind of mentioned on the side in the periphery that it does make you wonder if they get those as they revisit this stuff. And more tech comes online and more gameplay loops come online, if more modularity will come online.
Well, that it will be. Ben Curtis talked about it last CitizenCon, that when they overcome, these little tech obstacles, that the sky's the limit. They really want to work on different modularities for all these different ships, beyond just the customization of certain things. That would, for them, adding, a ton of different modules to the ships that are designed for it now, would actually, add to the list instead of, them building new ships. For a lot of different things, they can reuse the ships that they have, and not just as in variants, but in, say the Retaliator they were talking about. All these different things, the big things that were talked about with the Retaliator were the, torpedo bay, the habitation, the jump and drops, the drop seats. Mm-hmm. Front and aft. There's 2 different areas for their modules, but then you also have these things that were spoken about in the periphery as well. So yeah, they could do hundreds of different things with these ships as they are right now, without having to build new ships for these specific roles. I mean, they are going to continue building ships, and that's really what I want, as well as seeing new ships all the time. Like I said, I'm the collector, and the more, the more I'm happy as well. But also being able to reuse a lot of these ships that we see now, just by changing out modules, would be pretty awesome.
And I think like kind of circling back to you had that $150 base price. Now, of course, you're like some of your torpedo variant ships are much more costly than that. You know, some of your cargo ships are much more costly than that. Now, I understand it's just 40 SCU, but that's still, it's not bad. You know, your drop ships are incredibly expensive, you know what I mean? A lot of them. And then just kind of, you know, just as a daily driver as well. And I mean, you know, the Retaliator does have quite a few turrets on it as well. So, you know.
7.
Yeah. So you're getting a whole lot of versatility, you know, and potential versatility out of one ship. And I really think that's where modularity just begins to kind of shine, you know, that for $150, then if you buy those modules in game, just by through earnings or whatever, you're really going to have something that, you know, it's going to be very combat orientated, or you can do some ground stuff, something you can kind of just live out of if you're on a long trip, you know, or, you know, and we have seen where there's going to be these small cargo type operations that maybe are going to be a little more lucrative coming up. So 40 SCU might be right in the wheelhouse to make quite a profit on some, you know, some questionable merchandise.
Well, if you're wanting to invest in the game, $150, you're getting a lot of bang for the buck.
That's exactly what it boils down to. 100% agree with that.
Let's go down the list of the different ships, and then we can expand upon it a little bit.
Okay.
Let's get on something that excites you more than anything. Let's talk about the Caterpillar. Let's talk about all the things it can do.
Yes, I mean, you know, and so it's interesting because you have the Retaliator, and then a slightly bigger version of that is the Caterpillar, and then of course the, you know, stealing Space Dad's favorite thing, the big mamma jamma, the Endeavor, right? So yeah, The Caterpillar's got 6 modules that, and I believe 5 of them can be swapped out. One of them is kind of a static one, but the other ones are actual modules that you can swap out. And so here are the different ones they talked about. Number 1's an armory. So of course you have your weapons and armor in there. The one of them that kind of blew my mind was a store. You know, you actually will have like these kiosks in one of those modules where,
yeah,
you know,
I saw that retail shop. I was like, retail shop in a Caterpillar?
Yeah, I mean, that's fascinating to me. I mean, and, you know, we'll talk more about that, you know, like some of the potential gameplay for something like that, you know, around the corner here. But then, of course, you have your medical bays. And one of the things that kind of interested me about the Cat is, you know, when you have the Cat has it's got that catwalk along the top that goes above the cargo area, and they're actually, you know, like there's enough room in there to have 2 floors in these modules. So like when they were looking at the medical bay, you know, there was like the beds and that type of thing kind of on the lower deck. But there was this little elevator that went to the upper deck where it was kind of like a doctor's kind of quarters, or like a little research area type, medical research area. So that was another one that was mentioned, a medical bay. There was mobile salvage is potentially an option. Now, I think that was going to be a little more around the front of it, but, you know, like they mentioned, you know, having kind of salvage tools and equipment. There's a barracks module that had rows of bunks and a food dispensary type thing in it, so you can kind of have, you know, you could now you have to, you know, the Caterpillar has these 5 different sections, so it's like you really can begin, you know, imagining, you know, some of the versatility, you know, you could certainly, if you're going to have ground troops, you know, if you're going to do some salvage, if you're going to do, you know, if you're going to have like a mobile hospital, you know, of course, you do have your cargo modules, you know, those are what's there now, you know, and then there's an engineering module they talked about. And then, of course, you do have your, there was this one variant that they talked about, which was like, there are these, like, you can actually have these big fuel tanks that are in there as well. You know, and that, like I said, I don't know if some of this was all kind of based on this November 21, 2015, like where Randy Vasquez and Space Dad talk about the Drake Caterpillar. But, you know, they talked about, you know, kind of these, like, you know, like fuel tanks that can kind of extend its range. I mean, could you imagine, like, one of those things as a big fuel tank? I mean, that's pretty fascinating. But 2 things that blew my mind was the search and rescue were these things called launch bays that are only specifically in the front, where you would actually it would kind of fling or zing or push, search and rescue personnel out very quickly to where, like, if you were approaching like a derelict, or you're even maybe it's not quite derelict yet, it's a damaged ship and you're trying to quickly get, cover an EVA space, where you could it would launch you very quickly out that front towards the, wherever you're trying to do the search and rescue. Those are amazing things. I mean, so you really begin to kind of get a sense of the mix and match that you can do. And the last thing, and it's so funny, I sent Zel a picture of this because I was so floored by it, is that there's this docking collar. Like, one of those modules can become a docking collar where it pushes out like the docking collar tubes where other ships can come and connect. So if you had a mobile hospital, maybe you have a couple of cargo units, a couple of one or two hospital units, and then you have the docking collar where people can come and connect and get down there and get onto a docking bed, get to a hospital bed. It really begins to kind of inform, like, you on how incredibly versatile something, and we haven't even talked about the command module. The
command module.
Detaching.
That was one of the things that I was gonna, ask. So we got the fuselage that has cargo, habitation, science lab, a repair salvage shop, a retail shop. Even got brought up where I heard in passing a conference or meeting bays.
Potentially, yeah.
Yep. And then, medical bays. And then the Escher painting that you sent me with the car with all the airlocks in it.
Yeah,
which was nuts.
And they showed 4 constellations. Not, and that seems like a bridge too far to me, maybe. But 4 constellations basically docked, with the caterpillar, in different variations of the docking collars.
Dude, that looked tricky.
It definitely looked tricky for sure.
I could see, the 2 lateral docking or the over and under docking, but holy cow, the whole 4 of them. That's wild.
Now, one of the things that they did mention in that is each module, in this particular case, has its own life support, its own power supply. They're self-sustained. That's interesting to me. So is that going to take component space? You know what I mean? Are you going to have like kind of a tier, are you going to need a size 1 power? You know what I mean? Type thing in each one of those. Is there going to be component space in each one of those modular? That to me it really kind of gets crazy. And so here we find ourselves once again. I should have looked it up. I don't know the base price of a Caterpillar, but you're talking about this ship is like it is very much a Swiss Army knife. In that regard, and so you really begin to. It has a lot of variable gameplay. Outside of the fact it's one hell of a cargo hauler, to be honest with you.
Well, with the removable command module, one of the things I started thinking about with the the rear engine, that whole hull section, would there be a way that you could take the command module and swap to another drive section, and where it's built out in a particular way where you could kind of swap between those 2 drive sections?
I absolutely think you're detaching that command module and going and hooking up to another, just kind of like, it's almost like the way tractor trailers, they leave their trailers in a on a big cement pad someplace.
Well, that's exactly what came to mind to me, was Is it going to be like, these cats that can leave a trailer and then hook to another trailer? That's the first thing that came to mind.
That's exactly what it's going to be like. And I mean, it begins being somewhat mind blowing that you could have, maybe just three, depending on, how big your operation is. I mean, you could have, you could really have like a command kind of vessel, a barracks vessel. I mean, the only thing you don't have with that, with the cat is you don't have a hangar. You would have to rely on kind of the the airlocks. But other than that, I mean, there's a lot to be said for that ship. I mean, there's a ton of versatility in that.
Well, I believe for a lot of those guys out there that just love the Caterpillar. I mean, the gameplay, there's, so many different directions you can go with the gameplay with a cat, just beyond, space trucking. And that's, that's what they primarily, are used for right now. And people love it for that. I dig the cat for what it is. And, we have a couple of guys that just love the command module on the cat. They think it's the best cockpit ever. I wouldn't go that far. I think it's really cool. But, it's something that has a lot of character. And when modularity comes in, you can do so many different things with it.
Well, and so many ships are there are very few ships that are like, that should be an asymmetric like it is. I think that really, and Zel is absolutely right. I think, and we've kind of chatted about this kind of briefly. There are some Caterpillar zealots out there. They adore the Caterpillar. It's like it's their ship. They love the thing, and I can appreciate that. To me, it's I've never even flown one. So that maybe says a lot about it. I don't know if you've flown one or not, Zel.
Oh yeah, a couple of times. No, I dig it. It's cool. I really do. It definitely has that industrial look that we're really into. To me, it's a little, to get to the command module is a little windy. You go up an elevator, you have to, go down a hallway, then go up another hallway, then go up some stairs. But I do have a little bit of a bias because, I'm also, I love them all, but I'm kind of a Crusader fanboy too. So, getting into the Hercs, which is just kind of a straight shot. You got to go through about 10 doors, but it is a straight shot to the cockpit. So,
and I think you're definitely seeing kind of the old design versus the new design. I think that there's certainly some, the one thing, if you can say what you want about Star Citizen, and I'll say lots of good things. You can't say that their ship pipeline isn't improving. It's definitely getting better. I mean,
that's why a lot of these ships are going back to be reworked, kind of getting on that. They understood that, and now they kind of understand that things have there's ways to have a better flow. So yeah, a lot of these Caterpillar, I'm not sure. I'd say they will before modularity rolls in, that they would, they're going to do their gold pass on it and make it a little bit more straightforward. I don't know. People, it's all in the eye of the beholder, right?
Absolutely.
So maybe people dig that. It's just something that I felt like the corridors were a little convoluted to me. Same thing could be said. Something that's kind of near to us a little bit is the Starfare.
Absolutely.
The way it was designed. Of course, it was another one of those designs that were years ago. Some of the first design ships ever. And they're going to be basically gutting the Starfarer and, starting from scratch on it and redoing it. Because, that the layout of it is wacky.
Interesting. Yeah. It's very interesting how you have to kind of work your way through that ship to get places, and yeah, the Starfarer is an interesting, that's definitely one where I know that I am super excited about. Obviously the Expanse was a huge, kind of game changer in my mind. We all knew there were going to be the mobile refineries. But the one thing about the Starfarer that is kind of interesting is the fact that I really want to get more definition on what's going on with those Starfarer refineries. I think you and I talked about that not terribly long ago, where to me that if you can just take and bring raw quantanium to the Expanse and take refined quantanium to the Starfarer, and the Starfarer can take that refined quantanium and then refine that into
turn it into fuel. Yeah.
If it can do that, man, it is on. It seems like that needs to be either, kind of, they need to do a better job of kind of making, I'd like to know, is that going to be the kind of what closes that loop? Or is there going to be a different ship that kind of closes that loop? Because you definitely, that whole nomad or, traveling fleet where you can kind of produce your own energy. You can see the Starfarer, it does have the hydrogen scoops. It's got the fuel scoops. I'd like, for them to push that tech a little further where, if you load up your fuel scoop, if you go like on a fuel scoop run and you kind of top off on hydrogen, man, I'd like to be able to just dump that back into the into the refinery and then have that turn that into the hydrogen fuel, and then move on, and then just keep, go and fill up your tank again. So, that Starfarer, it's, kind of, and hopefully this isn't a bridge too far. I think it's a critical, some critical infrastructure, some, and it's good to know there's a redesign coming. I hope that there's some of that gameplay in there.
Well, one of the things that we had spoken about before is that they did make a big deal about that port for Quantanium. So, and it being a refinery, even now, if you look at the console, it has when you open up the console, it has the function to go into the refinery. And that's one of the things I believe is where when the Expanse comes online, I believe they're working on this gameplay loop right now. I believe, yes, they're going to take that refined Quantanium. You'll be able to add it to the Starfarer. The Starfarer will turn it into fuel, sort of like how it does with hydrogen.
Yes.
And that's how that will work out. The only other ship that we know that has that same tech is the Odyssey. It can scoop its own fuel, and it has a mining module to it where you can mine Quantanium with it, put it on board. It has a built-in refinery to it. So that ship is self-contained. It can move around the verse wherever it wants to go. It doesn't have to stop anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, the hydrogen fuel is an interesting thing. I don't know if it'll be able to be fitted with fuel scoops or not. So that would be the one area where the hydrogen fuel could come into play, but it absolutely can quantum everywhere.
Yep.
And I would imagine that thing's going to have an enormous hydrogen tank.
Well, they did talk about it being able to refine its own hydrogen as well. Yep. It was specifically talked about. It can do it both. And the reasoning behind it is that it can stay out infinitely.
That's the goal. I mean, really. I mean, that's the gold standard of that type of ship. And obviously pivoting back, we've talked about kind of the Odyssey versus the Carrack. I mean, I know the Carrack has those belly pods that are that are modular, and there's a lot of versatility in those things. And of course, the Carrack has its own charm and things about it that are fantastic. But that Odyssey is going to be a very interesting ship if it absolutely doesn't ever have to come back. If it could just stay out there kind of infinitely, that's kind of the dream in a way. I mean,
we also got to think about how they're planning on doing the Starfare. Is it one of the things where now we're speculating? We haven't heard this yet.
Absolutely.
But like I was talking about, they made a big deal about that new port and all that stuff. And this has just been within the past couple months. I meant to pull that reference up earlier today, but we kind of got a little behind. But one of the things I do know, the Starfare was designed also to be modular as well. A lot of the modules within it now, it's got beyond the pods, they have different refining tanks. It has 3 refining fuel tanks. It also, you can put, here's something that kind of blew my mind a little bit. They're also going to have cargo pods. So you can remove the fuel pods and add cargo pods.
Yeah, much more, and it's the raft that comes to mind. It's kind of, they're going to be external cargo pods.
Mm-hmm. Which is kind of wild. I know we're talking about modularity and, things providing different roles. But where do we come in to say certain things should be specific to that gameplay loop? Like the Starfare, its primary function is refueling. And it does make sense for it to have a refinery on it when you are out in the verse, to partner it with something like the Expanse, where you can bring that raw quantanium in, refine it, create quantum for refueling. It already has the big hydrogen scoops, and those will be like components in the future. Like now we can change out the fuel pods and the refueling boom. At some point, we'll also be able to do that with those hydrogen scoops.
Absolutely. They talked about being able to take like the, how the Gemini has that, those missile pods on the front, where you're going to be able to pull that right out of there and put the size 6 fuel scoop on the front of that thing. And
the Gemini. I've been watching a lot of old NASA stuff. We were talking about the Gemini modules and stuff. The Gemini. It's kind of wild.
So yeah, I mean, it is important to me, to see that come to full fruition, right? Where you've got like that, of course you do the mining, you bring the materials in, you put them in the Expanse. They do talk about, also it has it can refine other things than just metals, and so somewhere between the Starfare and the Expanse, if the ability to make the hydrogen and make the quantum fuel, that's really going to be, or it's either that or there's going to be some other ship that's going to, need to kind of bridge that gap. But I really do think they should work it. They've already got them there, and they're going to be doing a rework, and they've already got some of those, refining tanks on there. I definitely, and they certainly seem to have the wiggle room. I certainly hope that they stitch that stuff together in a neat package.
Well, you already kind of see how they have it set up, where they can put the refinery on the outside, because you have space back there on those platforms to put it underneath, where you can almost leave the interior for other things. Although, they may be using some of that interior space as well. Well, I'm curious to see how that plays out.
Yeah, I bet you, knowing how their pipeline works today and knowing how much wiggle room they have to work with, I bet you it's going to be a stunning rework. I bet you it's going to be a surprise. If I were to gamble a little bit, and I will for the sake of just kind of sticking behind my claim. I think that this is going to be a pretty cool rework, and we're really going to see maybe a flash of when they have these older designs. I think the 600i is another. 600 is another one of them. That they're going to rework these ships, and it's really going to be amazing to see how the new pipeline can really capitalize on the space that was at least generated, at the time. And not that they did a bad job with those ships, because you really have to take your time and make something and let it marinate for a while before you can actually kind of get your, you gotta crawl, then walk, then run, right? And so I am really excited for the Starfarer rework, and quite honestly, the 600 rework as well.
Well, that is kind of going to the 600. That's another one that has modularity as well. Mm-hmm. It has the exploration, where that whole they're shifting the way the layout is now. They're making the 600. They're swapping around. They're putting all the modular parts to the rear of the ship. So you have the exploration and the touring. The touring is going to be the more luxury level, on par with 890. And then you'll have the exploration that's going to have med bays and things like that. A lot of this, a lot of these modules, that's definitely one thing that we see a recurring theme is adding to the exploration gameplay loop.
Yeah, and exploration is one of those things where I could see us talking about that at some point as just a whole episode on its own, because I have a lot of questions about exploration, and I hope there's so many cool ways that those questions could be answered. But of course, right now we just have Stanton, and of course we'll have Pyro, and eventually we'll have Nix. But at some point, there's going to have to be some consideration for, just discovering, potentially, and who knows? I mean, maybe they might do something like that. It's just like, what a cool concept would be like, hey, somewhere in this enormous Pyro, or somewhere in this, I don't know the size of Nix, I can't quite know, but somewhere in Nix, there is a jump point to a new place, but you guys have to find it. Something like that would be awesome. If you have to kind of begin, like if they start giving you the tools or whatever, and you could begin kind of scanning and looking, and then, maybe being that, that first guy who discovers that jump point to that next place and trying to keep it under wraps. And, now that's, obviously me just really kind of getting off into the weeds, but, boy, that would be a lot of fun.
Well, we're seeing it a lot, say with the modules on the 600i, if you switch it out to exploration, mm-hmm. The Carrick, the Odyssey that we were just talking about, the Endeavor that we're going to hit upon here soon, all those things are designed. Now they did say, like with the Endeavor, for instance, they have that big array, and it's specifically designed. They talked a little bit about it, not to get too much into it right now, but they talked a little bit about, yes, that's what it does. It searches for these new jump points. So, man, we could theory craft for hours on all the different directions we could go with this, with the exploration gameplay loop. And the way all these ships are laid out right now, with that type of functionality, you're gonna, you would think that's how a lot of that's gonna play out. Even right now, I believe they said even in Terra, there is 2 other jump points that haven't even been discovered yet.
Yeah, see, that's what I'm talking about. Like, if they start doing things like that, where they're allowing players, they maybe just hint at the fact that there's a new system, and in place, but who knows where it's at, right? Like, let's say they're at 23 systems, and they're like, okay, there's 2 new systems, but you guys have to find the jump points. Oh, my stars in heaven. You have to, like, from a player perspective, for you to be the person that is out there kind of in a deep space exploration type thing, and for you to be the person that would locate the jump point that would take you to that next place, and for you to be the person who, you're the first person who goes through that jump point and comes out into that. I mean, you want to talk about driving gameplay, something like that. It would be an absolute deluge of players would come into the game, for sure.
Man, how awesome would that be?
It would be fantastic.
Is it going to be like, you would really think that it would be like how Elite Dangerous is when these new systems get discovered. Whoever discovered them, gets to name them. Are these jump points going to be, named after the player that funds the jump point?
Yeah.
Now, wouldn't that be awesome?
My gosh. And like I had always thought, like, it would be cool, like, so you have, like, let's say it takes 4 jumps to get to a system, but all of a sudden somebody's just doing some long range scanning and they find a jump point, and that jump point goes, like, from that, like, instead of having to go 4 systems, for whatever reason, it goes from that one system to this other system that's usually 4 jumps away. And it's like for 1 week, it's only, or for some, it's not a stable type thing. It's not going to last forever. But for a very short period of time, you'd be able to jump through this kind of unstable wormhole and cover much greater amount of ground, than you could potentially cover. Things like that. Oh, it really begins kind of getting the gears turning, if you will. Yeah, for sure.
That's where things like the Carrack, the Odyssey, the Endeavor, some of these other ships that are designed to go long range, because you're thinking about it. You think about it in Stanton terms, you're like, well, it is a big sandbox to play in. Even Stanton is.
Absolutely.
And it is shrunk way smaller than the Star Citizens that's going to be designed here in the future. And it's still a pretty good sized sandbox. So to my understanding, that Pyro is 4 times bigger than Stanton.
There are definitely supposed to be distances that drives just don't cover. Fuel tanks just aren't big enough. And you're going to have to put on that, where we're used to just, hey, I'm popping on an XL1 drive. I'm popping on a VK00 to head over here. No, you're popping on the Goliath. You're popping on the one that sips quantum, and you're going to make dinner while you go from one spot to another. And I really do hope, like, where other people might think that that's, here nor there, I really truly hope that that's a thing. I hope that it's a 45-minute jump to get to some spot.
I wouldn't. I mean, you're playing a game that exists in space, and space is vast. Yep. And you want to give the gameplay that weight, that, distances matter. It's not like, oh, well, I want to get there now. Well, the planet is far away, and you want to have that sense of distance. So yeah, I'm all about taking an extended period of time to jump from one place to the next.
Yeah, I was watching this physicist on Joe Rogan the other day, and he said the fastest rocket that we can put that could leave the Earth, the fastest one, would take 70,000 years. That's what he said. Not 70, not 700, 70,000 years to reach the closest thing to us in space.
Well, light. You think about light speed, which is crazy. It's 186,000 meters per second. That's fast.
That is incredibly fast.
The nearest little star system, 4 light years away. That means at the speed of light, it would take 4 years at the speed of
I
light
know.
to get there.
You know,
And
we're nowhere near. I mean, we're like like a tinieth like a 0.000 somewhere around what our best speed is to that. You know, maybe there's a lot of zeros in there. We're not moving that fast. Yeah. So.
No, we're not moving that fast.
Yeah.
But you know, so yeah, that that sense of scale, that's what we're looking for.
Yes.
I know a lot of we come from this fast food culture. We want it now. Now I guess we can even stop calling it fast food. It's like the Amazon culture.
Yep.
I ordered it. I ordered it 30 minutes ago. I want it now.
Yep.
So.
Yeah. So
sometimes you just gotta let the fun part is just sitting back and letting the game unfold and playing it instead of I have to be there yesterday.
Well, I mean, you got to use that chessboard in the MSR for something, right? I mean, you got to have some downtime. I think that is But actually, I just think it would be cool to have vastness. I really think it's a way for you to kind of to keep just the vastness of it. It needs to be there. And Stanton in and of itself is super fun, super huge, and when you go down on the planet surface, it's amazing, the scale. But I definitely I really want to put, it won't bother me at all if to go from Pyro 1 to Pyro 2, it's 10 minutes. It just won't bother me. I think it would be great. I think that feeds into the gameplay. It makes you plan a lot more carefully. You definitely it's like you can't get out there. I was watching it's funny, I was watching a spacewalk one time. This must have been around the year 2001, 2002. And this astronaut, like, he detached the wrench and then he let it go in space and he bumped it. They got away from him. And it's just like, oh, whoops, it's just like it floated away. He's like, oops, I hope we got another one of these up here. Because, and they did. They had 3 or 4 of them, or whatever.
These $30,000 wrenches.
Yeah, well, that's exactly right. I mean, it just got away from him. It's just like, oh man, it's like, I'm not gonna, it's dangerous up there. You can't spacewalk for the wrench, but by the same token, it's like, dang, that's it's like, hey, Houston, I need that wrench. You know what I mean? It's like, you need to do some planning for that. So,
well, for a game that they said are going to have 100 star systems, was that the number that they completely settled on? It goes, 100's enough, or is it going to get into one of those things, when Squadron 42 gets out, the PU finally gets built out into its, game state, out of beta. And then they can start working on, it's like a lot of different games, they have expansions to them. You take something like WoW that's been around for 15 years, where they keep building, what keeps the game going is building in these expansions. Is it going to get, I don't think we'll ever get 100 star systems, nowhere close. Well, maybe 20 by the time the game launches.
Oh,
I know they're getting a lot faster building this out, and they're building a lot of these tools. How much of it is it going to be hand built? How much of it is it going to be procedurally generated or AI built?
Right.
The way Elite Dangerous works, it's apples and oranges for sure. It's not the same fidelity. It's not any of that stuff.
Oh,
but,
no.
It's pretty infinite because all these areas are procedurally generated. Star Citizen isn't like that. We're on that more kind of realistic gameplay style. And it really is, that got kind of brought up this week when, Bethesda released that trailer this week on Starfield.
Right.
A lot of speculation came out. Oh, especially on Spectrum. Oh, is it going to be a Star Citizen killer? It was like, no. Well, it's a single player game. It's static. Yes, it has. They said it has 100 star systems, 1,000 planets, and all that jazz. But it isn't going to be living, breathing, and it isn't multiplayer. And I just don't think it's going to have that same vastness. When when I was looking at that trailer, I don't feel like when you go to these moons, when you go to these planets, you honestly feel like you're going someplace.
Yes.
Like the place exists. Not like it's just, it's a place in a game, but you really do kind of lose yourself in the immersion where you feel like it's a real place. You're like, wow, this feels pretty real to me. I don't, even playing things like No Man's Sky, Elite Dangerous is nowhere near, Elite Dangerous basically. Yeah, you have Odyssey, you can, kind of walk around and do things, but you don't have that seamlessness that you have like you have in Star Citizen. And Starfield is a game, it's an RPG, and it's once you've played through the gameplay, once you've run through the story, then that's it. I mean, yeah, you may have a lot of places to explore, but once you've played through the campaign, then it's done. It's more akin to Squadron 42 than anything.
Yeah, it's taken on that's exactly right. It's taken on Squadron a lot more than the PU and Star Citizen for sure. And one of the things there are some people that get lost in Skyrim and they just kind of never come out. They just love it. They just that's their jam. I do think that Starfield is different in the sense that it's not going to have a persistent universe. It's just those things aren't. It's going to have some. I'm sure its fidelity is going to be fine. I'm sure that it's going to be fun. I'm sure the co-op will be fun. And I'm perfectly. At whatever level Starfield. If it has any kind of an inertia where it pushes Star Citizen to try harder, I'm all for that. You know what I mean? I think competition is good. But for me, it is that kind of when you get those 25, 50, maybe 100-man type operations going. That those are the types of things. That's an experience that, as far as I know, at least at this point, you'd never have in Starfield.
That's the thing.
You never have a 30-man mining operation going in Starfield, as far as I know.
Even right now, for us, one day isn't the same as the next. Every day is something new and weird and different.
That's so true.
Even with the, even with the limited gameplay loops that we have right now, we still can get into things that we didn't do yesterday. It's ever changing, and that's the one thing that's going to keep something like Star Citizen apart from everything else. And I am with you. I think the more competition, the better.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because competition starts raising the bar, and then we start seeing, changes. A little kick in the pants didn't hurt anybody,
No, I think I welcome Starfield. I mean, I will tell you, there's definitely and this isn't unnecessary. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on this, but there's people who love console games, and I like sports games on consoles, like old Madden football or NHL hockey or those types of things. I liked playing those types of games way more on the console than the PC. But I'm a PC gamer. I mean, that's in and of itself for sure 100% thing. And so, I liked Skyrim. I think it was great. I really liked Oblivion. I thought it was great. But those games, you mentioned it. There's a story arc in them. There's a campaign. For myself, I've never just, after I kind of finished the campaign, just kind of kept going into the world and kind of looking for every kind of thing. It's, like Elden Ring comes up is another one too. Recently, I mean, I watched a lot of gameplay in Elden Ring. I thought it was really, really, really cool. But Star Citizen, like Star Wars Galaxies, was that sandbox. Star Citizen is it's a sandbox where you kind of go in there, and every day you kind of make your own thing up. And I don't. I appreciate the fact that it's so. I understand that there's a learning curve, and that there probably they need to do a better job at kind of helping young players kind of, understand kind of the buttons you need to push and the things that you need to do to avoid trouble in the PU. They definitely could, there can be certainly room for some improvement there, but it is the sandbox that really is what gets in my blood, right? I mean, that's the thing. The fact that every single time you go out, it's not static, it's not the same, it's not to be expected, and that's where that exploration wrap though is going to be really important, that they do it right.
Well, even kind of tying it back in is, even when they start building out all these different star systems, once they get settled, I know that they're going to have, a sequel to Squadron 42. Mm-hmm. So they'll be working on that. But once the initial Squadron gets released, then it's all hands back into the PU. They're going to be able to take all that tech that they learned building Squadron, add it into the PU. Here in a week or so, we're going to get 17.2. That's going to, put that new bit of flavor into it for the next couple months. And then 318's coming. And then we're going to have persistence.
No, 318.
The first part of persistence. And that's, that is that one little opening the door to what the game is going to be in the future.
The greater beyond with it. Absolutely.
Yep, I mean, the greater beyond. And so when all these things get built out and they're settled in the way they want to do things, we even know now that, the ship pipeline, ships can be, put out quicker. With the Montreal team adding all these new things to the planet, all these, points of interest and derelicts, and, adding that flavor into the game that we're going to see in 0.2. All that stuff is going to get quicker, released quicker and quicker. And when everybody can work on the persistent universe, then we're really going to start seeing the ramp up and how fast things can get built out. But my question is, how much is this going to be hand built, and how much is it going to be procedurally generated?
Well, and that's a real good question. I mean, and one thing I want to kind of state, it's like, are the first systems we get, like, I know Stanton and Pyro and Nyx, and I don't really know the greater expansion beyond that. Are those all specifically the Squadron 42? I mean, so are the first systems that are going to be in the PU kind of, hand stitched with Squadron 40? They probably are. I mean, I don't necessarily know the answers to that, but I mean, it's an excellent question that you're asking, for sure.
Well, to steer us back on the road, because we took a little detour.
We did. And we'll do that.
Well,
for sure.
I guess if you guys have listened, for 4 episodes, we can talk about a lot of different things.
We'll get in the weeds for sure.
So let's talk about all the ships, and then we'll iterate on some of the ones that some of the big ones. But let's talk about, all the ships. To my knowledge right now, there are 25 ships that are modular. There are 11 ships that what they're calling, and I'm doing my air quotes, semi-modular. And then you have the other vehicles, which are about 44, that have what they're saying they have no modularity, but they have customization. Sort of like the 300 series, where I know this is kind of the, the proto option package type thing.
The a la
Sort of
carte,
like
yeah.
they're wanting to make it kind of like if you go to Mercedes and go, "Ooh, I want the I want the wood trim or I want the carbon fiber trim, the trim package, so to speak." And
Exactly.
that's where like the 300 series went into. But all these, every ship that's being designed is going to have, we're not going to call it modularity, but we're going to call it customization. All the components obviously can be changed out. All the thruster systems, those will be in a package and will be changed out. You'll be able to customize interior parts, seats. You might want the Star Citizen, version of a Recaro seat
Yeah.
for one of your fighters. These things are all going to add customization, notwithstanding your paint options. They talked about years ago. They wheeled out the um, kind of this prototype with the hex code system where they had a terminal and you could go and pick your hex code um, for your color. I know that's going to be a little bit different. It may be more of an, on the RGB scale where you can either pick, like you've seen it before when you're doing character creations or something like that. You have
Right.
like this swatch of colors that may be, 60 colors and they range in that spectrum. Or just, pop in the hex code or the RGB values. You just type it in going, I want 7877, I want that color. And, you take it to Cousin Crow's and it paints that color. One of the things that they said that they were trying to make it to where all the different colors on these ships looked really good, because not every ship is going to be made out of the same material, and sometimes colors look kind of weird on different materials.
Absolutely.
So, they're adding that part into the ship pipeline where you could paint it and it looked good. It didn't look weird or plastic or something like that. It actually looked like paint on metal. And they've pretty much kind of figured that out now. So at some point we should be able to see the paint customization along with having your org logo, or kind of like the old World War II bombers where they'd have like the pinup girl on the nose,
Yeah,
something like
that's
that.
yeah, or like exactly,
Mhm.
or the shark's teeth or whatever on the front
Yeah,
of
the
the.
shark teeth. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. That I mean, that kind of stuff. I mean, those that level of customization is really cool. I mean, and I do hope. I mean, it would be kind of fun to be able to go through like your ships and pick different different types of finishes and that type of thing, and of course, sky's the limit there, and take it over to Cousin Crow's and kind of let them kind of aftermarket it, and you could put, if you do have your favorite ship, you could really do that with. And I do think that as they kind of, when it comes to the modular ships, I mean, when they get some of these real promised proof of concept type ones out, that I'm sure that they'll pivot back to some other ones and say, there's we could use this. I mean, it would be silly to create the tech, only for a couple of ships or whatever, and not necessarily apply it.
Mhm.
And especially when you have these big ships like the Javelin or the Bengal or the Idris, or I know those are different sized ships with the Kraken, but when you have lots and lots and lots of space to deal, it really seems like being able to specialize in those things would really, I mean, that's what people would do, is kind of you're not, it's not, if you, I mean, spacecraft are very purpose driven machines. you know and so you're not going to have some, well, I don't use that section of the ship very much. That's not going to be a thing. you know
Mm-mm.
I mean, it's every inch of space is going to be critically important. So hopefully that as that tech comes online and they really do kind of knock out the Retaliator and the CAD, and of course the big mamma jamma, the Endeavor, which I think we're going to talk about. There is this extended list, like you said, that where they definitely have kind of said that there's going to be modularity, and then there's going to be the semi-modulars, and then there's going to be the the customizations in layers, and so there's going to be an incredible amount of versatility and all that.
Well, yeah, kind of going back to the 300 series and some of these other ships, like, the things that you can add into them. When you buy the ship, what options are you going to have when you purchase the ship? Just like when you go to a dealership, what option package is available at the dealership for you to buy for that particular car?
Yeah.
Same thing. They tried it a little bit with some of these other ships where it's like, oh, well, do you want to add a coffee maker? Do you want to add this for $5? Or, and they kind of got a little pushback from the community on that.
Which is funny because I thought it was great. I mean, I had a $95 315p that eventually I think. I mean, I eventually melted it for a Taurus or whatever. But I was like, hey, man, this is great. I thought it was fun as heck.
Adding those options in the ship, I don't have a problem with. Buying, from a person that buys the paint packages and things like that all the time. I feel like, to generate revenue, I'm fine with that, but then, in the same token, you can go, well, how about a $1,600 Javelin?
Yeah. It's exactly right. I mean, that you could sure run it up there. There's a lot of room in there. It's like, oh man, I got this $12,000 Javelin. It's like, oh, yeah. Whoops.
But I'm totally cool with with them selling custom options, for $5-10 here and there. I'm all right with that. If
I am too. One of the things that I've been very happy with Star Citizen is that they have been very balanced about allowing you to purchase things in game that are also for sale. And I hope that they continue that trend. I hope that we never get to a spot where there are just microtransactions and the only way to get that thing is this one thing. I think one of the coolest things that anybody's ever done is taking some of that subscriber gear and kind of sticking it out in the universe in different loot boxes. Giving you a reward for being out for exploring. I like that idea. I mean,
I do too.
And while I understand, you could certainly have a few exclusive items. I'm okay with that. Top hat monocles. Maybe you don't want those out there. I don't. I have no problem with it. I don't have
being in the exclusive clubs. The executive club at on Orson and.
Yep. If you have the special paint job on that 600 series. Fine, keep it. You earned it.
Well, that's the thing too. There's also going to be times where, you go to Citizen Con or you go to a bar Citizen, and they're giving in-game, and that's fine.
Yes.
They're giving those incentives out to, as to say thanks for dropping by, and that's cool too. So
I've never been one to covet other people's real special items.
I mean, that's not my thing.
Yeah, I mean, no, don't get me wrong. I think it's cool. I mean, there are some unique chips or whatever, and I mean, and it seems like I watched a video where it's where there are a couple of ships that are very, very small amounts of people have them. And I think that's cool. I mean, I'm all right with it.
Like the Mustang Omega, where you had to do that AMD contest.
Yes.
Years and years and years ago.
And I think somebody actually has one of those F7 Lightnings or whatever the heck it's called. There's one of them in the verse.
F8 Lightnings?
That's what it is, yeah. One of those. Yeah, I think there's one of those in the verse that a guy has, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know exactly how he came, won a contest or something. But I'm all right with it. I don't care if, I mean.
But, you also have things, to kind of bring it back in. Then, take something like the 890.
Right.
Right, where, you got a piano in there. What if you want to change it out to a harp? I mean, these are things that, I don't like that couch, but I like this couch. I don't like that table, but I like this. All these things are going to have these little tiny customizations to it,
Absolutely.
I'd like to change my bar around. Maybe I don't want a pool,
Oh, and
Um,
I mean, yeah, that's exactly right. Like I really like, yes, I really like the idea of being able to kind of go in there and kind of have some choices.
a lot of these are going to be that way. It's what you call modular.
Yep,
And of course, the 890 is modular. All these rooms and stuff, you're going to be able to kind of shift around to a certain degree. Um,
absolutely.
Constellation, another one of those where on the luxury variants and on the explorer variants, a lot of these things you're going to be able to add, different little rooms and add the observation decks and things like that. Corsair is another one. Um, the freelancer
Yes.
is one that's going to be changed out a lot with the freelancer that you're going to get, your cargo. Then you'll be able to set it up with like gun racks and suit lockers, prison cells, um, these little different hab areas. You'll be able to add the coffee makers, so to speak.
Oh, exactly.
The Avenger is the same way. You could take the plain Jane cargo variant and then add the modules into it. I know that we get into this, what's a variant and what's a module. So
Yes.
like with the Avenger, you have the Warlock, and you have the other um getting Vapor Lock. What's the other one called? The not the Warlock,
There is they have the
you got the
Titan.
Titan,
Yep.
which is the base,
Yep.
and then you have the Warlock, and then you have
Oh, there's the Stalker.
Stalker,
Yeah.
which is the bounty hunter one
Mm-hmm.
with the cells in it. So, and you get into, well, what's a variant and what's a module? With which is kind of weird in a way because, like, when it came to the vanguards, when you went from the Warden to the Sentinel, all those were modules. All that interior little spaces right there inside the Vanguard, all those are modules, and those will have modularities as well. They talked a little bit about even putting jump seats and drop seats in there. Torpedo bay. You got for the Sentinel and stuff with electronic warfare.
Yeah.
Then you could also have an expanded HAB module that goes inside of it. A lot of these ships that you really didn't think about, are going to have a lot of different variation.
I definitely hope they return to this whole base, like the whole how they have the Retaliator base. I would be fine with a Vanguard base. You know what I mean? And then having the different kit that you want to, and you might be able to. So you bring instead of having to bring two different ships, you bring one ship, but then you have it's a smaller storage than a whole other ship to have a variant or pardon me a modular piece that you put in there.
Well, how they define variants is based on hard points. What are the hard points?
Absolutely.
Like on the Vanguard, some of these, if you buy the Sentinel, which is in game wise, it's the cheapest, but you can add all the same guns as you can on, say, the Harbinger. The only difference is, you don't get the bombs, but so you'll have that. Even with something like the Hornet, it has a bit of modularity to it as well. That middle section can come out. It becomes one big cylinder. So you have the big turret.
Right.
You have the kind of the AWACS stealth cap that you can put on it. You can change that out to a big cargo box.
That's an interesting,
for another variant.
I wonder how many SCU that would have, like 12 or something. This is interesting.
I would say, somewhere it would probably be less than, say, what an Avenger has. An Avenger is about 12 SCUs.
Oh yeah, that would probably be half that almost, maybe 6 or
Yeah,
something.
probably 6. Yeah,
Yeah,
that sounds about
4 to
right.
6. Yeah.
Yep, think about this. The little MPUVs, the little Argos,
Oh yeah, they have like that cargo
cargo
pod.
pod,
Yeah.
passenger pod. You know, uh, the cargo. Instead of having the pod, the cargo containers.
Yeah.
They have a few little modules that go in that little guy. And then the cutlasses, they're going to have apparently any of the variants you'll be able to take out. Like in the red, you should be able to take out that area that from the aft back where it's like that half little cargo area. A lot of that will be changed out. You can see it now where they've kind of put in those like that rail that goes through the center there. If you look at the Cutlass steel, you can see where they added the jump seats
Right.
right in the middle. If you look at the black, you can see where they plugged it in to that rail that runs, down the center of the ship. So that's where it's going to have its modularity. So you can add the, like in the blue where you have the prison cells, or the red where you have the med bay, and they're going to be adding a couple of other little things that you can plug into it. With something like the Prospector, something that's kind of near and dear to us. It's got modularity. It's one of the ships that is totally modular, and something that we had spoken about before about, what if you pull out the hab and made it to where it would be able to carry a couple of more saddlebags.
That would be awesome. Yeah, if you had just kind of a way to kind of internalize, or there was just something radical back there that allowed you to have, maybe up to 48 SCU on board. You know what I mean? Something along those lines. So you have 4 of those. Let's see, there's 32, right? So, yeah, I mean, that's very interesting. So, that would be, obviously those are, what, 8 SCU bags or whatever. So, you'd put another 16 SCU on there, go 48 or something would be awesome.
I mean, the way we use the Prospector now, we're not going to be doing any long-range jumping with it.
Right.
The way we have them built out now, and even in the future, if we do go further out, it's not like we're going to take our Prospectors straight to Pyro.
Right.
We're going to load them up and jump them out there in a bigger ship. So, I don't know if it needs the hab. I would like a little bit more SCU.
I would trade it in a second. I would trade those creature comforts in a second. I don't spend a lot of time back there, quite honestly, and being able to. We've all had those situations where there's a couple of purples there that have a few more SCU Quantanium in them, and I would squeeze every. If there was some modularity, I'd squeeze every bit of Quantanium on that thing that I could.
Yeah, I mean we're leaving money on the table.
Yeah.
So.
For sure. So, it's amazing. I mean, like modularity, like I think Zel's, alluding to it. There's a lot of, when you kind of start digging in, there's a lot of other ships that you didn't quite realize that have, and obviously it may not be as modular as, this type of thing or that type of thing. Now you may ask yourself, it's like, well, I could just buy a Cutlass Red and a Cutlass Blue, or I could just, but really, if you've got something like a Liberator, if you have one Cutlass, but then you have like the prison cell, the medical bay, or the cargo, you don't have 3 ships. You have 1 ship and 3 very storable, much smaller than a ship type thing. You know what I mean? So it'll be very interesting, in the future when like I said, a lot of the stuff comes out of proof of concept, and when they go back to do these gold standards, if they are not going to rethink some of the variants and maybe and morph that into some of the into modularity.
Well, they, between now and then, they can come up with a couple of, different ideas that they haven't even mentioned yet. When they're going through it, one of the ship artists, oh wow, we can add this to it.
Absolutely.
So, that's pretty wild with a lot of that stuff. When, the PU finally gets built out, holy cow, the sky is the limit on a lot of this stuff. People could come up with all kinds of, different variations on a lot of these ships just to keep them fresh.
Your pocket carrier is only going to be able to carry so much. There's going to be a time, like when we talked about these extended jumps and stuff, you might be, honestly, hours away from a spot where you have some of your assets. You might have to shuttle some assets, and that's when, like, something like a Retaliator, that has all, the different options. It just might be the right ship if you can store those modular pieces far easier than than the 4 ships you'd have to bring. It's like it will serve as a torpedo shooter and a drop ship. Those are decisions. I mean, you're gonna have to make hard decisions when you've got long distances and you can only bring so much. So that's where modularity really, it's going to allow you to bring more gameplay in a lot smaller space. I mean, so we talked about just kind of how cool it is, the rule of cool, and we've talked about how it's cost effective, but it's also, just the versatility is, second to none.
I'm going to go over, just as a reference for everybody out there, go over the ships that we know so far that are modular, and then we'll end up on talking about the Endeavor, because that'll run us in to the end of the show.
Oh yeah, and we're our shows have been typically about just under 2 hours. We're going to be a little long today, folks, so hang in there.
All right. We already hit upon the Avengers a little bit.
Yep.
That's one. Idris, everybody knew that in a lot of those rooms, can be swapped around, changed around. The Vanguards, we have the variants now, but there should be a base just like the Retaliator where you can swap out the core, like that core unit inside the Vanguard. The Hornet, we spoke about it a little bit. Mm-hmm. The Terrapin, that's another one that's going to have modularity as well. So you can change the interior out on it. The MPUV, we talked a little bit about. The Genesis Starliner, I mean, we could have a whole show on that thing.
Oh, that thing's going to be so sweet.
Yep. It's got, 4 variants to it, and they're all going to be modular. The Caterpillar, we spoke about the Caterpillar, one of the Swiss Army knives.
Yeah, that's a Swiss Army knife.
Of the SU. The SCU, Star Citizen Universe. The Cutlasses. The Kraken. Now, we all know that the Kraken has 2 variants. So we have the carrier the carrier variation, and then we also have the one that's going to be like a semi space station type place. It's not to get off on this too much, but that's another thing that we really need to deep dive to see how far they've thought about this. Having these retail shops, the BM is going to be talked about a lot this week.
Yep.
Tomorrow on
for Alien Week.
Well, you guys will be listening to it today.
Yeah, fair enough.
On Thursday, they're going to bring that up around the verse. So they're going to be talking about the Banu Merchant. It's Alien Week. We're going to, definitely find out a little bit more about that. But, having these on-ship shops, how's that all that going to work out? Because the Kraken variant is going to be, basically like a space station.
Right.
So, I'd be curious to see how that works out. The Vulture, it's got modularity. The Endeavor, which we're going to hit upon here in a minute.
Mm-hmm.
The Hulls, the whole series, they got modularity to them. We spoke a little bit about the Prospector. The 300 series we spoke a little bit about. 600 series, a little bit about it. They're bringing the 600 series up to gold standard. They're working on it right now.
Yeah.
So we'll definitely know more about it as well. It's not one of those things where they hit upon it really recently, like they did the Retaliator. So, when they start talking about the 600 series, modularity is right there. The Aurora, it's gonna have a couple of different
options,
modules for it. They say the Bangle. I'd really need to deep dive that one. I'm not sure about that one, but
when you have that much real estate, though, there's got to be some specialization that goes on.
Where you can, it'll be kind of like a Tetris board where you're just kind of shifting things around. The Pegasus is another thing that's going to be. We spoke about the Retaliator, the Javelin, the Redeemer. Because they call it a slash gunship, so it's going to have its jump seats and things.
And the Redeemers, to be honest with you, there's a lot of things I like about the Redeemer. I actually would like to see the interior of that thing, different than it is.
Oh, yeah.
It's a weird thing. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it, but I think you'd agree, right?
Oh, I definitely dig the Redeemer. I'm a fan of it.
Yes.
A lot of people don't like it.
I know. It is weird.
I kind of scratched my head why. I was like, they gave it to me to fly for a month, and I really dug it. So,
and I know they nerfed those turrets a little bit, but man, you could deal some pretty vicious. I think they've scaled some of that back, even some of the nerfs.
Yeah, they and when people start talking about nerfs, they're always temporary because, a lot of this gameplay hasn't been built out yet.
Right.
Or something like the Redeemer. It's a ship that's supposed to be punching up and not punching down because with that big giant gun, it hit pretty hard. But in the future, when, bigger, the larger ships start, I won't say capital ships because they'll be coming in, after Squadron 42 and stuff. But, when there's bigger ships in the gameplay loop, then, a lot of this stuff is going to be balanced around what's to come, not what is right now. So you guys keep that in mind. Yeah. It's like, it's a nerf, or, when is the Scorpion going to get a nerf, or when is the, because, I'm going to go kick rocks because my ion got the nerf.
Right.
Now it's just kind of bringing it back in line until these other things, come online and get a little bit more fleshed out. The Gladiator is one, Super Hornet's one. Things with semi-modularity, we talked about the Carrot. The Crucible, that's something we could do a whole show on. The Hawk is going to be able to switch out the little sail that it has, the little stasis field.
Oh, interesting. Where you can kind of the one-man stash back there.
Yep. Yeah. We spoke about the Freelancer. We spoke about the Starfarer, the 890. The Apollo is another thing where you'll be able to switch out the hospital beds.
Yeah, like the different tiers of them, and then how many there are, and that type of thing. Yeah.
So you have the Yeah, you can swap those tiers out where you have the 3 tier 1 beds, the 2 tier 2 beds, or the 1 3 or the 1 tier 3 bed, and then there's a left and a right side, so you can
Yep.
interchange those a little bit. And then you have the constellation we spoke a little bit about, and then the Corsair that has gone through it's in its final art phase right now. So I'd say somewhere in the near future, and at least my speculation is we're going to see it when they finally say, Pyro's going to, is on the horizon. We're going to definitely hear about the Corsair. I believe that's going to be when we're going to see its release.
Another asymmetric ship that people just seem to love. I think people who like those Drake ships, they like that Corsair. The Corsair to me is a very interesting looking ship. I really hope that it is those, the turrets on it that have got me a little, that's made me scratch my head. We'll see how they come out though. I don't want to kind of preemptively,
Yeah, don't draw any conclusions
right.
And pass judgment just yet. Yeah.
Yeah, because they could end up being much more like the Carracks, where they kind of are much more mobile than you think. So that's my hope, anyways.
Well, we've seen those teaser shots from the cockpits and the controls, and you can tell that they are really adding more fidelity to these cockpits. It looks really cool. So yeah, I'm excited to see what it looks like. One of our buddies, 11, man, he is all about the Corsair. He loves that thing.
It is funny how there are some ships that really just get under people. Get like the Prospector. For me, it's just I love that ship. The just sounds it makes when you're turning I absolutely love that ship. It's just one of those things where I've always had kind of a natural affinity to it. I like space mining already. I can really, I can fly the heck out of that thing. And I know it's just kind of a, it's kind of a purpose-built craft, but it is funny. How you have your cat, the people who would love the cat or love the Corsair. Yeah. There are 600i, people who really like that 600, series or, different ships like that. It's funny how, the different ones, they've done there's a lot of different ships, and they certainly have done a good job at having the different types of design styles,
yep.
And that type of thing.
It's very cool when they, keep to a base manufacturer style, keeping within that style.
Yep.
And, that's definitely cool when you can see something from a distance and go, hey, I bet that's a Drake ship.
Well, just the Hull series or the Prospector, yep. Or the Odyssey. There's definitely there's so many, and the way the Crusader ships are, and with the MSR and the and the Hercules ships. There's definitely that aesthetic is very, very pronounced.
Mm-hmm.
It's amazing.
Oh, you definitely know a MISC ship, just by the front end. And one of the things I feel, I know that, there's a lot of 600i fans out there. I believe the 600i kind of, in my summation, it kind of got away from that originist. It does have it in a way because it's got the clean, it's got the sweeping clean lines.
Mm-hmm.
But, I like them all. But, if you were to say, does that... It wasn't my design aesthetic that I dug. I looked at a couple of those other, renderings that they had when they were choosing it. There was a couple of other ones that I liked better. But,
I would agree with that 100%.
That's just me. That's just me giving my opinion on it. But not that I feel like it.
That being said, that bed, where it's like, you have that bed and it's like the whole front glass of that. That's pretty tough, man.
Yeah.
You think about
No,
it.
yeah. I mean, yes, the interior needs a rework because it's a little convoluted, um, but yeah, I mean, what's not to like about it? People,
Absolutely.
people like the firepower that it has, and it's a pretty cool one, and I like the 400i, and
I
a
like the
lot of people,
400i.
yeah, a lot of people don't dig it, so
I like that kind of
it,
that shark tooth front or whatever it's called.
yeah,
Like I do. I like it. Now there are some things on paper about the 400A I'm not 100% about, but as far as the actual ship itself, I think it's great. I mean, it's definitely got it's certainly very stylistic.
oh yeah, it's another one of those ships that is pretty straightforward. You go straight in, up, and you're right there at the cockpit. It's not a, you know, it's not that way, around the bend type thing where you have to get out of it.
It's very fast in a
Um,
straight line. I mean, it's a lot tougher than like I watched a dog, big dogfight thing happen, and now it wasn't dishing out tons of firepower, but it actually is a fairly tough ship. I mean, it got like it took a beating before it went down for sure.
and it was really built for speed. It was, to get the hell out of Dodge than to stay in a fight. So,
Absolutely.
um, let's talk about the Endeavor.
We need to, right? Yeah. So I mean, you cannot talk about modularity without really bringing in kind of the gargantuan, like that thing is next level. And I mean, when you're talking value, and what that is going to offer as far as gameplay goes, the base price I believe is still $350 if I'm
Yep.
not mistaken. I don't know pound for pound if there's a better deal in Star Citizen than that particular. If you're going to invest into the project, you're going to get a whole lot on your return. Now, I understand. I'm not saying buy all the different modules. Don't run it up to $1,000. Just buy the base, because I have a feeling at some point that base is going to be, the base alone is going to be double the value, that it is today. The only reason I think that it's $350 is because it's going to be the last ship that drops in the game, just about.
Yep. Uh, bang for the buck. I believe you're right. It's the way, it's kind of like how the Banu Merchantman grew tremendously in size. This thing, with the way, um, the way the modules and everything lay out, this thing is going to be way bigger than it was concept. Speculation is that, this is going to be a capital size ship.
And I mean,
You
if you
have
just take a
all the
look at the
modules.
size of the hangars that you can, I mean, just, it's an enormous ship. And it can, like a giant piece of it can detach from the rest of it. I mean,
Well,
this ship is really, I mean, it is your mobile, like whether or not you'll own a space station in this game, I don't know. Someday there may be ways for you to say there will be these, space stations that there are maybe a battle for control over, type of thing. And if if there are certain areas you hold on that thing, you just kind of own the keys to the kingdom, But this thing is really going to be your potentially your biggest mobile platform, for a variety of different, gameplays.
well, when you can add two of those docking bays
Yep.
where you could have, because it's talked about, being, with the docking, having the Cutlass Red, is that even with the Cutlass Red in there, you can still get over 4,000 SEU in the cargo bay.
Yep.
And that's with the ship parked in. And then, you know, with the way we looked at the way some of these white boxes have been laid out, you can get more than one Cutlass in there in that docking bay. and then have two of the smaller bays on the upper level. And that docking bay is 2 levels.
Yes.
So, being able to have two of those is nuts.
It is. You talk about a pocket carrier.
Yep.
I mean, you can just fit that thing to haul spaceships around. I mean, but I mean, it just does so much. I mean, but those large, I mean, there's large hangars are you put a couple of those on there. That's crazy. So.
Yeah. So the first stage is going to be like they're calling it the Explorer cab, and it's basically that that front drive.
Yep.
That it's going to be, that front section of the ship, which is the command module. It is going to be able to detach, so you can kind of use it to, when you jump out to a system, you can use it to kind of explore around and scan new little areas, away from, the drive section of the ship, which has all the modules attached to it. So you're going to have it's going to have,
it's going to have cargo.
Yep.
Like if you need to run and grab cargo for the rest of the station, you're going to take the Explorer cab. I mean, you're going to take the front of that ship and go pick it up and bring it back.
Yeah, it holds a lot of its cargo that it has right now. And it's going to have, they're calling it a short jump drive. So we don't know exactly what that is. It's like, is it going to be the extent of, say, what something that's in the PU now, like a fighter, how far it can jump, or say like something that would be able to jump like a medium ship that's in the game now, that type of jump. We know that it probably all the fuel and stuff, it's probably limited by the amount of fuel that it itself, the Explorer cab itself, can carry. Because we know the big, one of the modules is that big fuel pod that you can buy for it right now. That's one of the modules, is that it's
a long duration mission.
Yep.
Like it's just more fuel. I mean, so you can. Yep. I mean, holy smokes! I mean, how many, and I think we talked about that with the Caterpillar. It's like that. Just the ability to go further is a huge thing. I mean, we're going to do vast distances, so being able to, that's a super important option potentially if you're going to be maybe moving from one side of the verse to the next.
And then you have the second part of the ship is what they're calling the workship part. That's where all the magic happens. That's where all the modules attached to. It's the main section of the ship. It's in that 3-part grid that attaches to, 6 attachment points that I believe is going to take on that whole series tech, where it expands out, and and those grids will spread out, and you have those attachment points.
Yep. And you're going to have you're really going to be able to go crazy there. I mean, because then you're going to have your biodome, and of course that's a farm, basically. Now, if we just think about that in and of itself, I mean, you can grow crops.
Mm-hmm.
You can, quite honestly, you could grow specialized plants for medicine. Obviously there's the more nefarious things that you can grow in there.
grow your space weed.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, you're starting, I mean, that's, if you're doing some long-term exploration, I mean, obviously food's critical, so that's a huge thing. And of course then you have just that we already talked about it, the fuel pod, which is fantastic. And then this is when it really starts getting crazy. You have like a general research pod, and they say, for now, one of the things that it was interesting, because I did watch an extra info runners about this. They kind of talked about the general research pod versus the science pod. So one of them is for like external resource gathering, like the research pod, kind of using it externally, for gathering things. But then the science pod is more like for analytics modeling, like more inward research. Like, you kind of you have a way to kind of do data gathering and that type of thing. And so I don't, some of the stuff I don't know how it's going to flesh out, but it is fascinating to think that these, that you're going to have this level of versatility on the science front in this particular thing. Because I just want to say really quickly, earlier tonight, Zel and I were looking at this kind of this early look at like the cargo UI, and they listed these different types of things on that cargo UI. And there are going to be, I think as time wears on, there are going to be these medicinal things and other things that you can gather to synthesize things, and potentially, having these science modules is going to, lead you to be able to kind of make potentially better versions of those things.
Oh, synthesize those, those drugs.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, that kind of falls into that medical gameplay loop, and that'd be that's really going to be interesting to see how all that plays out.
It is.
Creating medicine and these new compounds, and how that little mini games all going to work. It's going to be pretty interesting. You get to you get to go in there and do your best Louis Pasteur. So.
That's exactly right. So and we've already kind of hit on the landing pod, and obviously the large hangars. You know what I mean? Then they have. Go ahead.
Oh, what's going to be wild? We're kind of with that one thing. With the analytic data gathering section, where it has that's where it's going to have most of its onboard computers.
Mm-hmm.
But it also has the big telescope array. Like we were hitting up on earlier tonight, is these are the things that are going to be out searching for new jump points.
That's exactly right. And and that's a tremendous. Yeah, the telescope is very interesting to me. That also may be a fantastic way to kind of, if there's some there's definitely some intelligence. I mean, one of the things you want to talk, if you want to project power in an area, one of the things you have to have is intelligence on that area. You have to have reconnaissance. And so if you can tuck one of these things away and you kind of know where certain things are at, and you have a telescope, it's going to be very interesting to see, like this. It's almost like the periscope type thing is a submarine kind of, could pop its periscope up and, kind of look around and see what was happening on the surface. There's an element to this thing where it's like, depending on, like how the telescoping works. And of course, there are these, of course, navigational studies and those types of things, but potentially just being able to look at like real time at a spot that's like, maybe 35 kilometers away or something, maybe 535 or 5,035 kilometers away. It's pretty amazing. That's pretty.
Well, bringing into that that part of it is, are you going to be paid for doing these surveys, these deep space surveys, and collecting all this data? Is it something that that's how the gameplay loop's going to work? Is that I go and sell this information or transmit the data, which also kind of brings in things like the data gatherers, like like the Star Runner, or Herald, or something that's gonna be able to intercept that information and maybe beat you to the punch on or reselling this newly discovered data or something like that.
Maybe you're using a telescope and you find you find a pocket of asteroids that you didn't realize were there, and they're very rich in pyrite. You know what I mean? And so you have these coordinates for this particular thing, and you have that stored, and somebody kind of, comes and kind of hacks your, hacks your system and runs away with your valuable data. I mean, that's an important thing. I mean, data stuff is going to be fun. I mean, it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out.
Well, it's sort of like one of those things that kind of actually kind of ties back to, stuff that we like to do are these, your guys out in your Carracks or your Odysseys or your Endeavors, when they discover these new areas. So they discovered a whole new asteroid field, or they discovered a planet, with this, with a particular ore type that we've been looking for. Could they sell that information? Was it one of those things where you would sell that information to say something like an org that that does have an industrial section tied to the org, that they would pay for that, because we need those materials for something that if however the crafting gameplay loop decides to to be unfolded, or these things that in the future that like we spoke about before, or these little things that we need that particular ore, because it aids in our crafting, whatever, and so we'd pay for that information to go mine that material before everybody else.
And that's just right. I mean, I love mining and I love industrial gameplay, but prospecting in general is just being able to find things that are rare, or find like resource blooms, or just pockets of areas that, I mean, you talk about a gold rush, you know what I mean? That's holy smokes. I mean, that's what it's about. And then think about, like, if you think about what a gold rush is, and then and then all of the, I mean, sure, I mean, there was all these people who went and mined for gold, but there was all these like massive amounts of peripheral businesses built up around that as well.
Oh yeah,
to support that whole situation. I mean,
basically the guys that got rich were the guys that sold, prospectors and miners the shovels.
That's exactly right.
Those are the dudes that got rich.
They sold the pack animals, the supplies. Yeah, the general shopkeepers, you know what I mean? They did. So, just kind of moving on, of course, they do have, one of the modules is a service module, which is a crew facility, allowing the workshop module to function as a standalone installation for longer missions. That's kind of very interesting. Of course, we hit on the medical bay. I mean, you could basically turn one of those into a mobile hospital if you want.
Well, that's basically what they called it, is a floating hospital.
Right.
It's like a Hope. They call it a Hope class floating hospital.
Right.
So, I mean, I don't know if you looked at the concepts of that, but holy cow, it's like 3 levels, and it's got like 30 beds or something. It's pretty big.
Yeah, and that's when you begin realizing, it's like when they say that it's, slightly smaller than a Bengal. Okay, I don't know if that is enormous. I mean, they talk about a crew of 3 to 5. I have a feeling that's
that's 3 to 5 in the cab.
Yeah, that's what I mean. There's no 3 to 5 happening there, man. That's an organization's, like main kind of, you'd want to talk about. It's like, you can imagine, like, okay, we're going over, that's the place where you're going to have lots of your science facilities. You potentially, you have maybe even a couple of them, one for kind of growing your food, and one of them for your science, and and then one of them is as a landing bay with some barracks. I mean, you could certainly have some, mobile operations out of one of those things. Oh, holy smokes!
Oh, your whole, you could service. And your org probably wants to get one of these things. It is literally going to be, one of your major base points.
Absolutely.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Now the super collider, I've been waited, kind of.
Oh, brother, I know. Yeah, we're both really excited about this. This is man.
Because the thing we've talked about it, right? So you take the reclaimer and the vultures and you salvage things, you pull off components, then you take them over the old crucible, or potentially even to a caterpillar is going to have like an engineering or repair type thing, or however. Mostly I think the Crucible's it's right up its alley. You take those things and you repair them, right? So they're broken, they've been shot, they've got laser marks on them, whatever. You take them over, you kind of make sure they're operational. Then you bring them over to the old Endeavor and you throw those things in the Super Collider. And that is an overclocking facility. And that is like kind of your white room, like, where you take something like thrusters or weapons or components and you absolutely take them to the next level. You make them, and that's where I think you and I have talked about having that RNG type hope. Like, just, I really do hope it's like, I just made the best XL1 drive in the galaxy. I just made, what I mean? I really hope that they put a randomizer concept in that, where for whatever reason, if there's a gameplay loop and somehow, like, maybe it's got this erratic sequence where it's incredibly difficult. But if
you're working and you're trying to keep everything within the parameters, it's like, for some reason, you see all the different levels, and you're working the levels and you're making sure that when you're overclocking it, you don't take it and take it to the red where you
right.
smoke the components and you have that type of gameplay where you have that risk reward factor.
Exactly, where you could burn it up or you get into the like 98th percentile of all of them in the universe. It's like, holy smokes, it's like, I don't know how this happened, but this thing is like the most fuel efficient, super fast drive ever. A special drive that actually kind of opens up maybe all of a sudden a ship can make a crossing it could never make before.
I'll tell you.
Oh, my stars, yeah.
Oh, that's something else that's very interesting, is that engineering gameplay when they bring it in and how to just tweak the most out of a particular item. That's just going to be awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny because we've talked about what would you use earlier in the show, like what would you use your prospectors, what would you use that area? Well, I'll tell you one thing I'll do is I'll probably have a VK00 and a Atlas drive, sitting on my floor back there, because it's like, hey man, I'm doing my short range stuff fine, but it's like, hey, all of a sudden say, oh, I got to make a longer jump. I'm just going to pull the one drive out and stick the other one in. Why? If you can do that stuff on the fly, that's something that I would highly recommend you do. I mean, if you can take 15 minutes and kind of swap out components and make your ship, kind of more like, okay, well, we're just traveling, so we're going to make it more, it's going to be able to move at longer range. It's not going to be as fast, that type of thing, That's that's where that engineering gameplay gets, man, it starts getting really, there's a lot of wrap around that makes just my head spin. In a good way.
Oh, yeah, there is, that is going to be one of the cooler things in the game. So, along with everything else, it's like, we're going to use the Super Collider for overclocking, certain things and, weapons and thrusters and, being able to, to tweak it to its very limits and, and if they put in, engaging gameplay, for that process when you're looking, for that, for that best overclock ever kind of thing.
Exactly.
So that's going to be pretty fantastic. And so it's one of those things. It's, not to sound like a hypocrite, but I almost want to go buy one right now. So.
Well, I'm in the same boat, man. I mean, we talk about it. It's like, that's, I think we covered a lot of bases in modularity. I think that, obviously the small, the medium, the large, the extended list, we kind of hypothesized a little bit about just kind of some of, we certainly have done some theory crafting about things that may or may not necessarily come to pass. And I will say, a lot of modularity information's a little antiquated. I definitely would like to see, kind of a reboot of some of that conversation a little bit, for sure. And but for me, the driving factors about modularity, we've hit on them, kind of, it's the bang for your buck, the versatility, is realistically something you should strongly consider if you're ever thinking about investing real money. I don't think you can go wrong with any of these ships. Now, I understand the Caterpillar's a touch pricey, but the base Retaliator at 150 and the base Endeavor at 350. I think those two are absolutely worth every nickel, especially if you're going to invest in the project. And for the most part, I would recommend buying all the modules with in-game money.
Yep, in-game money, because they are the parts that get pricey.
Yep.
You can buy the Discovery class, the science package was what they call, with the service, crew, general research, and the general science pods. That's $425. So, and if you want to buy the master set, that's all the modules, $900.
Yeah, that's when it runs up. But here's the thing, I do think that these prices are for the only reason they're down where they're at right now is because it's such a long ways off. I think this ship is only gonna grow in value. I mean, it's just based on its size, based on its versatility. This is gonna be one of those ones where you're going. It's interesting because you're gonna have your Krakens, and there's gonna be those types of fleets, and then I think you're gonna have more of your Endeavor style fleets. You know what I mean? Almost.
Well, if you're wanting to invest into the game, or if you're into a lot of people are into that CCU
chains,
where you're chaining things up and purchasing something at a base price like the Endeavor, where you can use the war bonds or melt up, because this thing is going to go up in price.
Oh, it is. Last but not least, I mean, I will absolutely give Info Runners, the full credit for this. But they talked about in one of their episodes, you can grow your space weed. That was their word. I don't know if it's a real. I mean, it actually showed. We seen that earlier today in that cargo thing. I do wonder if that's going to be a thing.
It's colloquial because even when we were doing Jumptown, that's the first thing that came to my head. That's the first thing I said was we're out here collecting space weed.
Right.
It's what it looked like. It looked like
bales of weed. Yeah, exactly. So you have your space weed, then, and this is with the Endeavor. Then you have your onboard lab where you can process it. Then you can have a cargo bay that you can kind of load up your smuggling ships. So, if the Endeavor's, it's got a science. It's got a science aspect to it, and it's got a kind of an up and up org type thing. But don't sleep on it for some kind of for pirate operations either. It's definitely got there's some there's some other things. You could be smuggling right out of that thing. You could be growing your own nays or haze or whatever that's you can be growing picking up these going around doing cave spelunking or wherever that you collect all of these kind of organic components, bringing them back, potentially planting them or getting seeds from them, and then using your biodomes, then using your labs to process it, and using your landing pads to kind of process that stuff and make cargo out of it and smuggle it.
Yeah.
So there's
ship it to Grimhex, or ship it to
Ruin
places
Station,
in Pyro or whatever. Yeah,
exactly.
Because I think obviously Endeavor is going to be, it's pretty big, and they say it's got more of a plug and play feature, which is going to be one of those situations where you can drop off a pod and and then kind of hover above it and then lower yourself down and, and attach those pods.
Oh, my stars. Yeah, that's actually a really good point. It's like, what if you had this spot in space and you brought four, different pods out there and you just kind of detached from them and then ran and grabbed the other ones and brought them out there, and then with persistence being what it is, you potentially could just hot swap them.
Yeah. So you set your little base up, somewhere in an asteroid field, and, the way things are, people, even with the way Stanton is right now, you're never just gonna, trip over something out in the asteroid field.
No, I mean, there's a lot of there's a lot of places I don't go, and I mean, yeah. But there's there are certainly some places you could tuck yourself away, and you would not be. Nobody could ever find you at all. Nobody could ever.
When the new star map comes online, the new Mobigas and all that, where you can set waypoints to things, yep. So you can just drop it out in the middle of nowhere, and that's your own little spot, out in the verse, and go out there. And I guess if you're into that smuggling gameplay, a lot of people are.
Well, and I think honestly, whenever there were, whenever you kind of pioneers went out west, I mean, there were people that kind of created these way stations along the way, you could certainly see where an organization would have enough of their own security, would have enough of their own capabilities to, have enough members, and they would absolutely be able to have, if there's a long jump point from one spot to another where they could have their own refueling, potentially protect that stuff, and have kind of like these midway points between, that are just kind of organic player midway points, between a couple of spots where you could stop, refuel, who knows what you're going to get charged, and that type of thing.
No, it's gonna be pretty awesome. And something like the Endeavor, where people, when you start looking at it and start adding this up, the speculation is these things are gonna be pretty big. Over 1,000 meters long. So that's getting up that capital ship territory. So for $350. It's not bad.
Capital ship territory for $350. That's exactly right. So, kind of a private base, if you will, potentially. And that's, that is a very, very high tier in the game, So
that's pretty wild. Well, I think we've covered it all, man.
I think we have, man. I was worried about this one. I thought I figured she'd run a touch long, and she did. She ran about 40 minutes longer than we normally would, and that's okay. So for myself, I just want to say, and I think I say this a lot, but I'll say it again. I absolutely completely enjoy these conversations. I really appreciate the time and energy and effort that you put into digging into some of the to some of the information that we were able to talk about here. There was a lot of things I didn't know, quite honestly, that kind of blows my mind. So Zel, thank you very much. While you're out there, if you're out there listening and you're still listening, I really want to thank everybody who I've appreciated all of the warm kind of comments from people who are enjoying the podcast. I love doing it, and just thanks a lot, sir.
Man, I tell you, talking with you, we have so much fun.
We do.
Talking about this and speculating and what might come to pass and things like that, and that's what we that's really what we get into, is that theory crafting and hoping and praying, these little things that we talk about, they come to fruition. So I love our little talks, man. Thanks for the little talks, dude. But I'll tell you, for something like this, and a lot of people have been asking, and hopefully next week we'll be on Spotify and iTunes. So you guys look for that. And like, comment, subscribe to the show. Leave us any criticisms, or, tell us about what you like. And we'll see you next week on the Rock Runner Report.